Welcome to Russia's World, where you will hear prominent voices, psychoanalysts, psychologists, therapists, philosophers, and thought leaders talk about a variety of mental health concerns and problems, including how to deal with anxiety, depression, and chronic conditions, and how to become more resilient, find inner peace, be emotionally engaged in your personal and professional life, and just be your beautiful, authentic self. Hello, everyone. We have a special guest, a very special guest today. We have Pat Sullivan. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks, Arash.
And so you might know the drill. I'd like to ask the first question is the toughest, and it gets easier as we ease along, is how would you briefly describe yourself to our audience here? What would you say?
Okay, I'm a retired museum educator, so I worked in a couple of major Canadian art galleries in my career, running education programs. And in my retirement, I've taken up creative writing. And although I've always loved writing and I've always been a keen reader, so in a sense, this is a fulfillment of a lifelong love of books and reading and writing.
And that brings us to your book. All right, awesome. In the Frame. What is it about? What can we expect? What would you say to our audience here?
Okay, In the Frame is a humorous take on a fictional public art gallery set in Toronto in 1998. It's a kind of a mashup of art world satire and workplace comedy. A lot of books about the art world look at either focus on heists or fakes and forgeries, which are fascinating. But I didn't want to do that, having worked in galleries and seeing all the ups and downs and mishaps that happen behind the scenes. I was more interested in a gentle expose of that. So the Toronto Art Gallery is gearing up for a big gala fundraiser to raise money for a new wing. And so this follows we follow four characters who work at the gallery, the director, two curators, and an educator. And we follow their involvement in the events of the evening and its aftermath.
So yeah, and you're making the ordinary extraordinary, which is harder to do, but especially, I mean, anybody like heists would be interesting for anyone, but to make a workplace satire, I think people can also relate to that, right, in their own personal lives. And I want to look at specifically of the art gallery, and so the look behind it. There's so much to unpack here, but what would you say, for example, in terms of clashes that exist in that world?
Yeah, well, one conflict among characters is the director, George, versus the chairman of the board of trustees, Victor. And Victor is very keen to lead the fundraising campaign, and he's an important donor because he is going to donate money to the campaign and also his collection of horse paintings to the gallery. But he's pushing George on another aspect too, which I won't go into. That's a bit of a spoiler. So George has a kind of love-hate relationship with Victor. He certainly has to keep him on his side, but he's often a bit irritated by Victor's behavior. So that's one conflict. Another conflict is between Amanda, the curator of contemporary art, and the director, because they're both very ambitious. The director wants the new wing built at any cost because that'll make him look good. And Amanda really cares about her territory, about getting contemporary art displayed well and getting the artist she wants into the gallery. So there's a bit of a clash between her and the director about that. And then Rachel, the educator, she's burned out. She's been at TAG, Toronto Art Gallery, its nickname is TAG, for a while, and she's very frustrated working under the acting head of her department, Jeremy. So she's actually been driven to look elsewhere for a new job. So there's a real personality clash between her and Jeremy. So I think those are all kind of identifiable workplace conflicts that might exist anywhere, but they have a particular resonance in an art gallery. I think people also might be interested to just see what goes into the work leading up to an exhibition or a big event at an art gallery. When people go to an art gallery, everything looks perfect. The works are perfectly installed. The docents give a great tour. It's all very, very impressive for the
Yeah.
visitor. But of course, behind the scenes, all sorts of things can
Exactly, the behind the scenes, and I'm so glad you included horse paintings because a recent series I very much enjoyed is Luck by David Milch, and it gives us that background view of like what goes on with horse racing, and so all the complications. So I'm thinking, is that kind of similar? Like you giving us a glimpse of like what's happening behind the scenes in a similar way, and you've seen the series yourself?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that series. Well, that series had some nefarious aspects, right? Because there was organized crime and other things.
And that's not the
My
case.
book doesn't have any of that. It's a very gentle look behind the scenes, and there's no criminal. Well, there's potential criminal activity, but it doesn't really emerge. But yeah, I think people don't know. For example, some of my minor characters in the book are the technical assistants, the people who install the work. So the average visitor may not be aware of what.
I've never thought of them. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
they're a really important part of the gallery, and they not only have to follow the curator's wishes in how an exhibition or the permanent collection should be installed, they often have to maintain the works. If it's a contemporary work that involves technology, that involves maintenance throughout the time it's on display. So there's stuff like that I bring in.
And so it's you have to juggle various things when you have or you're running an art gallery. And this is fictional, by the way, because I was trying to find the Toronto Art Gallery. It does not exist, but I love the acronym TAG. I think that's a great
Okay.
hashtag tag and so on. But I think like just trying to please different people. I mean, that must be tough because you want to get money, you want to please the donors, as you say, the wealthy donor. You also want to please the general public, so you want them to come, and then you also the art lovers who are there, and that must be a very tough balancing act. You have to make compromises and difficult decisions.
Yes, excuse me, it is complex, and you're perfectly right. There's the government funders, there's the people like on the board or this kind of well-heeled patrons of
Mhm.
the gallery who might want to donate art or at least money. There's the membership of the gallery,
Right.
which
Yes.
is maybe a more a less exclusive type of people. There's the staff who work at the gallery, who are often unionized, as this gallery is. So there's union rules and regulations. And then there's the volunteers who work at the gallery. And then there's the diverse public who attend the gallery, who are all often expecting different things. The local artists want more local artists shown at
Yes.
the gallery. The some people want, tours and programs that suit them, like maybe yoga classes in the gallery or whatever. So it's always a balancing act,
Yeah.
I think it's, and being the director of a public art gallery or any cultural institution is a bit of a political position and certainly a balancing act with all these different interests and agendas.
And then you have kids too, and apparently they play a role too in your novel,
They
right?
play a role in my book, and of course, traditionally, education departments in galleries often started with programs for children, either school tours or art classes for children. Education and it's often called public programs or public engagement now because it's broadened so much in the past maybe 30 years to include a range of activities and programs for a range of people, not just kids, but kids are certainly a focus.
And you've given tours yourself, right?
I
So
have.
with children too. So how do you deal with children who are just not interested in the art?
Well, I'm going to do a shout out for education staff and volunteers
Good.
because they work really hard on preparing programs that will be engaging for children. Certainly, as an educator, I had to be aware of the school curriculum in Ontario because a big part of enticing a teacher to bring a class to the gallery with all the work that that entails on their part, a way to entice them is to convince them that the school tour is going to help their curriculum. It's tied into their curriculum. So we would have to research that and then prepare, choose the best works of art that could be relatable to children and then devise the programs or activities that are going to engage children. So that's really the task of the educators. And then, of course, if you're working with volunteer docents, you've got to train the docents really well so that they can deliver the programs well too.
Now, you yourself have studied art history, but I'm wondering also, how do you feel about not just the kids, but the lack of awareness or knowledge about the arts of the adults too? And so you talk about something that's hilarious, the difference between Monet and Manet, and they're pretty close, but they're very, very different. So
Right.
how do you respond to that too, and how do characters respond to it too, in a way, that kind of lack of information that people have, the general public?
Yeah, well, that's it. If you do a public tour, especially a tour for, I mean, with the school group, you kind of know what the school is like, what part of the city it's from. You know a bit about them. But when it's just a general tour for adults, it can be anyone showing up. It could be someone with quite a bit of art knowledge who maybe wants to show that off a little bit, and people who know nothing about art and they're brought there by their friend and they've got to, put up with you for half an hour or something. So you have to be ready for anything. You have to really know your stuff, but then you have to focus on the audience and be tactful. Often the most frequently asked question I've had on a tour is, "What is this worth?" or "Is that the original frame?" And they may not be the most interesting questions to me, but I have to answer them respectfully and tactfully because it's a sincere question on the part of the audience member. So you kind of have, in terms of art knowledge, you kind of have to gauge, if you throw out some facts and see people nodding, then maybe you've got an informed audience and you can proceed on that line. And if you get blank stares, then you've got to maybe
Yeah.
give a bit more information so the people can situate the work of art in context and just follow you better. So it's being a good tour guide is not just learning the stuff and having the knowledge. It's knowing something about public speaking and being able to gauge your audience as well.
Yeah, and as an educator, I know the blank stares, and I recognize it. It's like, okay, I have to change my strategy. But one thing
Right.
that usually works, I think, is really like bringing your own passion to it, your excitement, your
Yes.
enthusiasm, and
Mhm.
that is kind of contagious in many ways. When
Yes.
you are fascinated with it, and others will pick up on it too.
Right. Yeah. And in a way, that's a challenge for an educator too, because we don't get to choose the exhibitions, right? It's the
Oh,
curatorial staff who create the exhibitions. And frankly, some exhibitions and installations are more interesting. In my career, some were more interesting than others, but if your job is to give a general tour or tour that show, then you've just got to act as if it's the most interesting show you've ever had to tour.
yeah, and we have, I attend a French philosophy group that has different themes. And so previously was cinema, which is something I'm very fascinated about and knowledgeable about as well. And then it turned to literature. Again, I do have knowledge in that. And now it's paintings. And
Mm,
so, but to my surprise, and I'm again, yes, I like it, but it's like it doesn't resonate as much with me. So I found the first part of it, frankly, a bit boring, to be honest. But then the last 15 minutes impressed me because then I realized there's so much I don't see. And that kind of, I think openness is really important, the curiosity and openness,
yeah.
because we talked about the impressionists. And so he showed us the images of the faces of the people who are portrayed, especially when they're on their own. And they look like zombies. They look like they're not happy. And that was a form of criticizing the bourgeoisie at the time. So there's so much that is out there. And I think if we show people how profound it is, how deep it is in many ways, especially the main artists that are, again, we admire, then I think the appreciation will come automatically. Like for me, I never see Impressionists the same way after that talk.
Right. And I think you're expressing something that I've often heard from people that when they are told about the context surrounding a work of art, their appreciation really expands. And that reflects a change in art history. For a long time, Western art history just looked at an artist's influences and the formal aspects, the visual aspects of the work of art. And now it's much more important to bring in the context and even a small work that may look very minimal, like a portrait. You think, well, who's that? But then maybe who that person was, when they lived, what they did, why the artist chose to paint them. There can often be an incredible story around it, and that just enriches appreciation so much.
Exactly. And just a previous podcast was about chess. And I asked him about AI and whether AI will kill chess. And he said it wouldn't, because when you have a game of chess, it's not only about the game, it's about the personality behind it, the people who are playing, the things the tension that they bring, the drama that they bring to the game itself. Do you feel the same way about art, that AI will not be able to create art that resonates because it's lacking that personal human touch to it?
Yeah, I think I do feel that. And I've read a little bit about how artists feel about the spread of AI. And I think they feel the same way writers do, that even though AI can do a lot of what we're doing, it will never encompass the human quality that a human artist or a human writer can bring to their work.
And you are focusing on characters, so there's already that human aspect to it. So I like the division of the different characters as chapters. And my first novel I wrote like many years ago was about this guy who had these four women who had relationships with, and each of them had their own chapter. So, but yours again follows that pattern, and that way, I think you're focusing more on the personal versus the professional dynamics too, and what each of them brings to the situation. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I mean, at times I despaired of the fact that I decided to have four different points of view. At one point, I had five points of
Oh,
view, but an editor I was working with for a while, she asked me, "Do you really need Jeremy's point of view as well? I mean, he sort of parallels Rachel's." And when I thought of it that way, I ditched Jeremy. He's still a character, but you only see him from others' points of view. And in a way, as a first-time novelist, it was a challenge at times to have four points of view, because to step back and think, okay, that's George, now I'm with Arthur, and I thought I'd made it harder for myself. But the same editor was the one who suggested that maybe I should name each chapter so it's very clear. Chapter 1, George, so people know where they are. Chapter 2, Amanda. And like, why not? Why not make it clear for the reader? Why make the reader work harder? So I think that helped so that people can follow very well. And I haven't all the feedback I've had from people who've read the novel. Nobody said that they were confused by the characters or didn't know where they were, whatever. So that's good.
and that's the beauty of writing, especially like fiction, because you kind of the characters grow on you, and
Yes.
you're more knowledgeable about them, but also you care about them, and you feel that connection too with each of the different characters that you're creating.
Yeah. And I did a character profile for each character. So I wrote about, their childhood, their education, their family background, and that, and very little of which comes into the novel. But as every writing class will tell you, the author needs to know all that, whether you use it or not. It's the background that you need to have to feel very secure and to know your characters. And doing that is a good exercise, because then it helps you to just have an intuitive understanding of what they're going to say or do next.
Especially if you have various characters, right? To make
Yeah.
sure that you are consistent with that. So
Right.
that is very
Yeah.
useful. And so why in the frame? So the title itself, why did you choose that?
Yeah, an earlier version of the book was called The Opening because it was focused on an exhibition opening. And when I had to change the plot to focus on this gala fundraiser, I knew I needed a new title. And the title In the Frame came to me in an aquafit class. And as
Of
soon
all
as it
places. Yeah.
yeah, as soon as it happened, I knew it was perfect, and for a number of reasons. First of all, it's set in an art gallery. An art gallery is full of frames. Some of the characters are trying to blame other characters for things that go wrong, so they're trying to frame them. Another character is in the frame for a new job. That's an expression when you're applying and might be considered for a new job, so that works for her. And then part of a work of art that plays a role in the story of the novel is a contemporary work that uses cameras and projector. So, of course, cameras have a frame too. So, in all sorts of ways, In the Frame just seemed the perfect title.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love puns. So I think that's great. And also like the 15 minutes of fame. Now that's fame. But also you are the spotlight is on you, perhaps
Yeah.
on the different people, on the different characters. I think there's
Yeah.
that pressure, right? To have to perform in front of others. But this has been something that you've been working on for a long time. So I'm really curious about the motivation of writing this novel. What was the motivation for you?
Yeah, it started in the late 90s when I started to feel a bit fed up and plateaued with my job at the Art Gallery of Ontario, and also I felt the gallery was going through a lot of upheaval at that time, and I did start to think, oh. That would make a good book. That could be in a book. I started to make random notes. And in the 2000s, I had moved to work at another gallery. And I just started, I guess yeah, I had started writing out some of my frustration, just coming home and writing what happened that day with no particular idea of where this would go, but I needed to do it. And I just kept up that habit. And around in 2009, I attended a writing workshop at Hollyhock Retreat on Cortes Island, and that's when I started writing. That I actually started writing a novel, like wrote the first sentence and kept going, and that was the opening. And then in 2019, I was doing a mentorship with the Vancouver Manuscript Intensive, and at that point, my mentor said that I had to rethink my novel. I had too many characters and not enough drama. So I did rethink it from the ground up and came up with a new plot and started writing that. So from March 2019 to last year, so that's about 5, 6 years, I was writing the novel that's come out In the Frame.
I have a lot of therapists here and psychologists and psychiatrists on Arash's World, and they write books too. And they all say, I think all of them say it's therapeutic. Would you say that's the same for you? Because when you talk about frustrations, is writing therapeutic for you as well?
Yes, I've always I've kept a journal for a long time. I would say the journal is more therapeutic.
Mhm.
With writing the sort of random notes on what was happening at work, just getting that down on paper, that was the therapy. But then when you're going to write fiction, you can't stop at therapy. That the therapy is just for myself, but writing fiction is for the reader. So that's when you have to change gears and think about, okay, how do I shape all this for the reader? So, of course, that's when your imagination comes in. That's when you get to invent things like naturists coming for a tour at the art gallery and kids sleeping overnight and all the crazy things that go on in this book. So fiction goes into exaggeration in order to make a good plot that will interest the reader.
Yeah, and then adding the humor to it, I think that
Yes.
also
Yeah.
makes it more interesting
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the reader.
Yeah.
Do you ever read your previous journal entries? Because I recently found one that I wrote when I was 19, and I was reading it, and it was fascinating because it's like entering this other world that I was not familiar with. Does that ever happen to
Yes, I've
you?
often gone back to a certain period and think, okay, what did happen then, or how was I feeling? And I'm always amazed. I'm amazed by the things I didn't write about that I remember vividly. I'm amazed about what I write about that maybe I've forgotten about.
Mhm,
And I'm
mhm.
often kind of reassured by my emotional state that I did have the right take on things then, that I wasn't wacky, that my emotional state then matches how I perceive the event now. Or sometimes it's slightly different. But yeah, I certainly haven't read all my journals all over, but I've certainly read parts of them.
Now, this is your debut novel. What would be some tips you have for budding writers or writers who have work but they haven't published yet? What would you say? And it's tough. I mean, I think that's trying to get published is or having your book is a tough thing. Once it's completed, then the next step is pretty tough.
Yeah, yeah. And I did try to go the traditional publishing route, and unfortunately, that didn't work. So I knew I wanted to get the book out. So I decided to go with self-publishing. So I'm published with Iguana Books, which is a hybrid publisher. So they were able to provide the editor, the cover designer, and they provided the formatting, so they actually shaped the book for me, but it's up to me to do the marketing. So I think writers have to be prepared for two steps. It's a lot of work to prepare your manuscript for submissions to publishers. When I was submitting to traditional publishers, everyone has a different requirement. Some want the whole manuscript, some want just the first 30 pages, whatever. So you have to read carefully what they want and submit accordingly. So that's a whole job in itself. And then now that I've got the book out, but the marketing's on me, now I have to do the work of spreading the word about the book through social media, trying to get it into bookstores on consignment, getting it into libraries. So that's a whole other set of tasks that I'm still chipping away at. So I guess my advice for writers is you've got to, write the book that you want, but then
Mhm.
you've got to change gears a bit to think about how do I talk to a publisher to convince them, and then how do I do the marketing? And those are kind of
And
different.
that flexibility can be tough,
Yeah.
especially when you think you have a masterpiece and they say, well, you need to change a few things there or kill a character off, which is like, something that's you're reluctant to do because, you
Right.
created this character.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It is tough. I mean, a lot of books do get published in Canada every year, so writers, are able to get them out. But it's not easy, and you've just got to persevere.
You need thick skin for sure. Yes.
Yeah,
And
and
so just a couple last questions. Oh, first one, do the horse pictures exist and where can I find them?
the kind of paintings I was imagining for Victor's collection would be paintings by George Stubbs. He was a British painter of the 18th century, and he's well known for his paintings of horses. So often just a horse on its own, or maybe a horse standing with its owner. In the 19th century, there were other painters who might paint a horse race or horses at a county fair or something like that. So I'm imagining Victor's collection as a mixture of those two kinds of horse paintings. So if you Google Stubbs, you'll find paintings like that. And because I've made Victor a horse owner, so he breeds horses and
Oh, I did not know
enters
that.
them
That's awesome.
in races. So that's why
Hmm.
he chose to collect those kind of paintings.
Wonderful. And this might be too soon, but what's next? Are you planning on working other projects, or you just say, no, I just want to enjoy the fame now?
Well, I'm still waiting for the fame, but yeah, I've had two other ideas for novels for a couple of years now, and they've been, waiting until I could get this off my desk. And because I still have a lot to do in terms of marketing and promotion, I can't really get to them yet. But one idea is for a murder mystery, and the other one is a more serious novel. But they're both set in the art world, so I think there's there's still more for me to prime from the world of art and museums and paintings. And that's as much as I can say
Cool.
about them.
Yeah. No, this is the first of a trilogy, potentially. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Pat Sullivan, for being on Rash's World. Your book, again, is In the Frame. Best of luck to you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Arash. It was fun.